right and righteous, and those who are bombed are the terrorists. Even if it persists, the doublespeak. You, my fellow American, you are a voice and a light. You have to speak out, because all they want, their eternal smile that appears on their face, merely comes from the knowledge that you walk the streets on their behalf, and that you speak out, and that you walk gently to the ballot box, and you vote for the politicians that stand behind you. Abandon Harris is our course, our determination. We have no choice but to do the right thing, to speak out, to speak the truth, and to shine the light of truth on the wrongs, to echo Ida Wells. It's a continuation of the fight against lynching and racism and police brutality, that we end these bombardments and we open a new door, a light from this nation to the rest of the world, that we utter the words, hand in hand, courageous, encampments and protests in our votes, together from all backgrounds, single-minded in our pursuit, defiant despite all those who tell us that we're on the wrong course. Remember the past, where those who told Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and John Lewis they were on the wrong, and they are the valorized, and they are the ones who are sung by our children and our grandchildren. Be sung by your grandchildren and your children forever, and speak the truth. A single word, a vote, a voice, immortal, forever written, for all to hear, undeniable. Cease fire now.
Cease fire now. Cease fire now. Cease fire now. Cease fire now. Cease fire now. Cease fire now. Cease fire now.
Hazem Nasreddin, H-A-Z-I-M, last name N-A-S-A-R-E-D-D-E-N. I am from the great state of Arizona, a swing state where Biden 2020 won by 10,457 votes. And in Arizona, we have nearly 50,000 Muslim voters. And there are people of conscience in all of Arizona, not just Muslims, who will choose to be on the right side of history. I was at the first Abandon Biden convention or conference in Dearborn, Michigan on December 2nd, in which I said that the blue wave of 2020 was tainted with the blood and the stain of every child, mother, father that was killed by the Israeli apartheid regime. 15,000 people in December. We are now over 25,000 more mothers, fathers, children, babies that have been killed. And that blood is now not only on Biden's hands, it is on Kamala's hands. She is part of the administration has chosen not to speak out. So I have two messages today. First, to Kamala Harris, that we in Arizona will abandon you. That we will not vote for you, that we will campaign against you. And to the Muslim community and to all people of conscience across this country and in Arizona, that now is the time to not vote for the lesser of two evils. We learned yesterday from Claudia de Cruz, who is one of the candidates behind us, that our vote is not only our voice, it is our consent. It is our consent to genocide, our consent to apartheid, our consent to the destruction of Gaza and to the people of Palestine. So we have to choose not to consent. It is time to abandon Harris, abandon the two-party system, and to vote our conscience. Thank you.
Ceasefire now.
Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now!
Ceasefire now.
Good morning and salam. Peace and blessings be upon you. My name is Farah Khan, and I am from the battleground state of Michigan. So the Muslim American voters in 2020 in Michigan was around 206,000, and that must have grown in numbers exponentially, because my kids can vote now. So Biden won the 2020 election by 153,000 and 188 votes to be exact. So today we stand here in a resolve to abandon Kamala Harris, whose poor response and lack of decisive action in the face of the Gaza genocide has left us disheartened and betrayed. Our voices cannot be silenced, and our hearts ache for the innocent lives lost while leaders like Harris remain complicit by aiding and funding the war criminal, the corrupt state of Israel. We deserve leadership that stands firm against injustice, that speaks up for the voiceless, and acts with the compassion and courage. Until we see that, we will continue to turn away from those who have failed us in this critical moment. History will judge us, not by the words we speak today, but by the actions we take in this moment of crisis. So, as we are here announcing Abandon Harris, will continue to work actively against this genocidal regime, this genocidal machinery, and we will keep abandoning them. And we will work actively and vote for the leaders that we believe in, that stand with us, that are moral, they have their morality in place, not like the corrupt people that we have in the White House right now. So I will end with this. Kamala Harris, you can't hide. We won't vote for genocide. Free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine. Free, free Palestine. Free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine.
Good morning. My name is Puyan Odubadi. I am the co-chair of Abandon Biden in North Carolina. I'm an immigration attorney and a criminal defense attorney. Close to 100,000 Arab and Muslims were registered to vote in 2020. And additionally, we have tens of thousands of allies and people of conscience who stand by us. Trump won North Carolina by 74,000 votes in 2020. North Carolina remains a critical and battleground state. In March of this year, 83,000 voted no preference to protest the Biden-Harris genocide. Nothing has changed since then. The daily slaughter continues. The horrific suffering continues. The pure bigotry and dehumanization from the Biden-Harris State Department continues. They exalt war criminals and disparage our students for standing up against genocide. Harris has embraced this genocide. There's no change in policy. There's no proposed change in policy. She has yet to criticize Israel. She's had harsher words for people protesting Netanyahu, who came to our Congress and spewed lie after lie to thunderous applause by both the Democrats and Republicans.
Shame.
She says too many people have been killed. By whom? Any criticism of the murderers? Any criticism of the occupation starving people to death? Any criticism of the apartheid that she has supported for decades and decades? As a former prosecutor, does she have any criticism of Israel's countless documented war crimes? She says it's time for a ceasefire, but she's never said what she's going to do to obtain that ceasefire. As such, it's the same policy as Biden, to just let Netanyahu do whatever he wants for as long as he wants. Harris thinks that we're fools. She's playing on the trauma of communities who are looking for a glimmer of hope. She doesn't even offer us crumbs. She offers us the possibility of crumbs. She offers us the illusion of crumbs. A slightly better tone and the same policies are not enough. We demand a ceasefire, an arms embargo, and an end to the occupation. The Biden and Harris administration have failed to achieve the bare minimum of a ceasefire, and so we'll continue to work against them in North Carolina to ensure that people who support genocide cannot win at the ballot.
Ceasefire now.
Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now!
Good morning, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Rizwan Samad, and I came here from Washington State. I'm a lifetime Democrat who's abandoning Harris due to her unconditional support of Israeli Zionist regime who are committing genocide. The whole world is screaming, but makes no difference in Biden administration and his VP Kamala, who's the nominee for the Democratic Party as a presidential candidate. Just remember, we can watch the misery and suffering and dying of little babies underneath the rubble in our smartphone. They've been hiding from us for many years, but the day has been changed. The social media changed this world. The Bharat media used to hide all the information from us, but thanks to social media, we can watch it in our handheld cell phone. There's not only 40,000 women and children died. There are another 145,000 buried under the rubble. They didn't even get a chance for the prayer. The world has to wake up, and America has to wake up. Listen, we cannot be part of genocide, of killing women and children and babies. Have some mercy, have some soul. You know, how can you sleep at night thinking about it, that your tax dollar are responsible of killing innocent children just because AIPAC controlled this country? We have good candidates, moral candidates. You know, wake up, America. Wake up. For God's sake, wake up. The whole world is screaming, and we are listening to this Zionist evil regime. And I hope and pray that this woman, if she doesn't decide it to stop the genocide, she lose. And people say to me, Riz, then you are voting for Donald Trump. He will be the next president and he hates Muslims. I say genocide is happening right now. I don't care about the hypothetical genocide. I lived and survived under 4 years of Biden administration. I will survive. I will sacrifice, but stop killing the women and children. Not only Gaza, and also other countries around the world. Thank you, and I apologize for being emotional, but that's the truth comes out from my heart. As a father and a grandfather, I can't watch anymore, no longer. The suffering has to be stopped. Ceasefire now!
Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now!
Ceasefire now. Ceasefire now.
Thank you, Brother Rizwan. My name is Nicholas Klein, and I'm the co-chair of Abandoned Biden in Nevada, a swing state with roughly 7,000 Muslims and many more allies, and where Democrats won in 2020 by a little over 2% of the vote. Muslims, Arabs, people of conscience from all political parties and all walks of life in Nevada are becoming more engaged than ever. They're recognizing their power, know their right to demand that their representatives actually represent them. Our groups have the infrastructure needed to communicate with each other about political issues and candidate selection. We have infrastructure needed to educate each other on world events and local matters. Our communities already have the infrastructure needed to activate voters in the upcoming election. We are building momentum with local and national groups that may vary in strategy, but we are united in purpose. Kamala Harris used to say she was for the people. She was against and criticized Biden for segregation by race as a harm, and she stated a harm against any one of us is a harm against all of us. Now we know who us is, and we know who her people are not. Her actions speak louder than her words, but her silence is deafening to us. The issue of Palestine and of the Palestinian people is a litmus test. It demonstrates the health of our democracy, the values of the American people, and the struggles of the common man. But it also demonstrates so much more if you listen closely. Kamala Harris has sent representatives into our communities to listen to us, but she is not hearing us. On the contrary, she tells us to shut up because she is speaking. We have red lines, we have boundaries, and we have power, and we will not forget the harms her administration has done to us, because those harms her administration has done to all of us. In our thousands, in our millions, we are all Palestinian. We will abandon Harris. Thank you.
Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now!
My name is Abdullah. I am from Florida, a co-chair of Abandoned Harris from Florida. Florida, a state that Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and the Democratic Party decided to cancel their primaries in. What is the Democratic Party, Biden and Harris, so afraid of? Are they afraid that the voters' voices might actually try to call them out on their AIPAC-picked policies? Are they afraid? Do they not want us to talk about their AIPAC policies, which are funded and run by the right-wing Likud fascist party of the apartheid state of Israel? These same Zionist extremists, by the way, will have you believe that this is some kind of religious war against religious extremism. This is gaslighting of historic proportions, how Muslims throughout history have treated their fellow Jewish brothers and sisters and Christian brothers and sisters. Let me give you a little bit of a history lesson. Let's talk about Umar bin Khattab, the second caliph of Islam who liberated Palestine for the first time. And when he entered Jerusalem, the patriarch of Jerusalem very proudly exclaimed to Umar, the second caliph of Islam, look at the Wailing Wall, the Jewish sacred site, and look how it's full of garbage. We made sure we desecrated their site. And the second caliph of Islam said, you must clean this site immediately because we do not defile religious places of worship. And then the patriarch of Jerusalem said very proudly, we kicked all the Jews out of Jerusalem for the last 500 years. And it was the second caliph of Islam who brought the Jews back to Jerusalem. And then the patriarch of Jerusalem said, I know you have to go pray, so why don't you pray in this church? And the second caliph of Islam said, I don't want to pray in this church for fear that future generations may start praying as Muslims. I want you to keep this church. And he ended up praying outside of the church. And that church is there till this day. This is how Muslims treat our fellow brothers, and Jewish brothers and Christian brothers. You had Salahuddin Ayyubi, also known as Saladin, who liberated Palestine for the second time. Do you know who his physician was? The physician who was actually born in the Islamic Empire in Cordoba. He was none other than Maimonides himself, known as the second Moses, who was revered by Jews all over the world, and he is buried today in Tiberias. And on his gravestone says, "From Moses to Moses, there will be no other Moses." That's how high of a position Maimonides, the physician of Salahuddin Ayyubi, who liberated Palestine for the second time. That's how we treat our fellow brothers and sisters. And then you have the church that was bombed by these Zionist extremists, the third oldest church in Gaza that had survived hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years under Muslim rule, but was destroyed by Zionist extremists, ultimately in 2024. That's what you call Zionist extremist rule. And then, of course, in more modern times, we had the first Jewish person ever to win a primary. Who was his campaign manager? None other than the Pakistani Muslim Faz Shakir. So they want to come here and tell you that this is a religious war? Spare me your righteous indignation, your false righteous indignation. And now, these neoliberals want to come over here and tell you we must have the first black president. We must have any black president. We tell them we don't need just any black president. We need a Cornel West black president. And then the neoliberals will tell you we must have a woman president. We don't need just any woman president. We need a Jill Stein or a Claudia de la Cruz woman president. They want to weaponize our identities against us. Don't be fooled by this nonsense ideology and by this nonsense identity politics. We know not all skin folk are kinfolk. And we know just because you put black and brown faces in high places, that doesn't mean they're going to fight genocide the way you have it today. And let me bring it back to say that one of the greatest hoaxes perpetrated in American history is the oligarchy convincing you that the two-party system gives you a choice. Nothing could be further from the truth. They want to talk about right wing and left wing. These are both wings of the same vulture of oppression that has been feeding upon the American people. We need to break the back of the two-party system. We need to break the back of this oligarchy. But unfortunately, oftentimes is what has happened throughout history. Americans are concerned about breaking the back of the two-party system. And they may not be willing to do what it takes. But once again, it is going to be the oppressed minorities who do what the complacent majority refuse to do. And finally, my message to Kamala Harris. I know Kamala Harris, you don't really like listening to pro-peace activists, pro-Palestine activists, and hearing our voices heard. But let me just give you a little bit of a message. If you ever want to see a Democrat in the White House ever again, unless you want to see a Democrat never elected in the White House ever again, keep supporting the genocide. Otherwise, we're speaking. Thank you.
Come on now. Ceasefire now. Ceasefire now.
Ceasefire now. Ceasefire now.
Hello everyone. Thank you to the Abandoned Paris Lounge and the press that's currently here. My name is Claudia de la Cruz, and I'm the presidential candidate for the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and I'll be speaking in representation of the party. I want to start by saying that the Democratic Party has not only been complicit, but it has been an investor, a collaborator in genocide, in the slaughter and displacement of thousands of Palestinians. Not only in the last 10 months, but in the last 76 years. And we need to sit and hold that truth as people in the belly of empire. And we must understand our historic responsibility to do something for the sake of humanity. We are here in total and utmost and proudly solidarity with the Palestinian people's right to liberation. Totally and completely. We understand that unless the occupation ends, genocide will continue to happen. We are here to march on the DNC to make it clear that whether the Democrats continue to occupy the White House post-elections, they have lost the people. And they will continue to lose the people for as long as they are committed to war and genocide. No Kamala. We don't want Trump. We want to stop to genocide. We want to stop to terror. That the Biden and Harris administration has carried on because people seem to forget that Kamala Harris is the second in command. She's not coming in with a clean slate. She has a political record. And it seems like the Democrats would rather have Trump coming back to the White House than stop a genocide. They would want a Trump presidency and having an administration that brings in white supremacy, bigotry, and hatred, rather than stopping the slaughtering of babies, mothers, and families. That should tell us all we need to know about the Democratic Party. It is important for us to understand that the Democrats have waged war to people at home and abroad. And in fact, the genocide happening in Gaza is very much connected to the horrors that the working class and poor people in this country experience every day. The Biden-Harris administration are not only collaborating and investing in the slaughtering and starvation of the Palestinian people. They are not only pumping billions of dollars and weapons to genocide. It is the Harris-Biden administration that has brought us the cutting of a child tax credit that lifted children out of poverty and took us back to numbers prior to COVID. It has been under the Biden-Harris administration that corporations have squeezed the life out of working class and poor people in this country through price gouging. Forcing people to have to make the choice between eating and paying for medicine. It is the Biden-Harris administration that has had the executive power and have utilized it against immigrants. It is under the watch of the Democrats that there's been an increase in police violence and terror in our communities. Over 1,000 people were killed, civilians, in the streets of the United States by murderers called cops. It is under the Biden-Harris administration that cop cities are emerging all across this country to brutalize civilians. They are not innocent. And it's not only Biden, it's not only Blinken, and it's not only Harris. It is the institution of the Democratic Party. They are warmongers. They support terror. And they pay for it. The genocide in Gaza is not a single issue, Ms. Harris. This genocide is the biggest wake-up call to the world. And it is your deaf tone to our voices that will cost the demise of your party. The U.S. government administration know that their priority of waging war and killing civilians, either by genocide or by starvation, through poverty, displacement, or mass incarceration, be it in Palestine, or in the south side of Chicago, or in the South Bronx, or in Oak Ridge in Iowa. They must know that it's their complicity, their investment, their stubbornness, and commitment to death and destruction that has led people to abandon them because they abandoned the people first. It is important for us to sound the alarm as we march, to make it clear, crystal clear, that we're not going home after November 5th. That in fact, our movement will grow and will continue to be strengthened because the sea of consciousness consciousness in this country has shifted. And the propaganda of the colonial state of Israel and the ruling class in the United States is not stronger than our will to free Palestine.
Free Palestine.
Free Palestine. Free Palestine.
I'm here because I have an unstoppable love for my precious Palestinian brothers and sisters. And when you love people, you hate the fact that they're being treated unjustly and unfairly. So when it comes to genocide, when it comes to ethnic cleansing, when it comes to apartheid, that's true anywhere in the world, any color, any gender, any sexual orientation, any nation. But we're talking about our precious Palestinian brothers and sisters and siblings in Gaza and the West Bank. I come from a black people who've been hated and terrorized and traumatized for 400 years. And yet taught the world so much about love and freedom and wounded healing. So my starting point is to applaud each and every one of my brothers and sisters and siblings for standing here. Because we're in it, not tied to an election or some Machiavellian politics or some utilitarian calculus. But we're here because we love oppressed people, and in this case, it's Palestinians.
Yes.
It could be any oppressed people. It could be Jews in Germany. It could be landless workers in Brazil.
Yes.
It could be brothers and sisters in Haiti. But we live in an American empire that has such unbelievable spiritual decay and moral deterioration. They think they can reproduce themselves with a level of hypocrisy and mendacity and criminality and get away with it. And we're simply here to say, chickens come home to roost. You're going to reap what you sow. Sooner or later, your lies and your crimes will be revealed and disclosed. Because truth crushed to earth will rise again, and truth is bigger than all of us, but it has something to do with the suffering of those who find themselves in plights and predicaments that the great Frantz Fanon called the wretched of the earth, and we are in solidarity with them.
Yes.
So when we talk about this two-party system, it's just part of a predatory capitalist network obsessed with short-term gain, driven by an organized greed that will weaponize hatred, that will somehow think that the masses, the poor and working people here and around the world will not raise their voices, and we say,
We will.
get off the crack pipe. We'll raise our voices as long as we have vocal cords.
Right.
Because that's what it means to be a decent human being. Some sense of integrity and honesty and decency and courage. And when we look at our politicians, we see accommodation to empire, accommodation to organized greed. They're cowardly, conformist, complacent. We shatter that cowardliness. We shatter that complacency. We shatter that accommodation. Not in the spirit of self-righteousness, but simply saying we want to bear a witness, and we speak not just to ourselves, not just to those who march today, not just those in the Western Hemisphere. We speak to people all around the world, the global South, to connect with the best of those who came before, and to make sure our children and children's children all around the world can see examples and have some sense of a better future. Last but not least, we do it with a smile.
That's right.
Because we speak directly to our precious Palestinians right now and say to them, we will never abandon you. We stand with you. And we see your grace, we see your dignity with your victory signs, even given the IDF terror coming at you. That kind of human spirit can never be crushed. And I know on the intimate terms, my great-grandfather was a slave in this empire. And part of his legacy and part of his wife, my great-great-grandmama's legacy, is at work in me. And that's why I get some of the source of my love to love others and integrity to talk about integrity and be in solidarity with people around the world. So when we march today in Chicago, we're going to march with style, with a smile, and remembering our Palestinian brothers and sisters, male, female, but especially the precious and priceless children.
Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now!
Ceasefire now. I am so grateful to everyone here, to the wise words that we've heard from everyone. So grateful to all those who've come out in support. So grateful to the press who's come out to cover this event. I'm especially grateful to Abandon Biden, now Abandon Harris, for your incredible courage, for your vision, for your unstoppable determination here to stand up and lead the way forward. Not only to stop genocide, but also to hold our highest officers of the land, to hold the White House and its occupants accountable for genocide. Because without that, there is no democracy. So Abandon Biden, Abandon Harris, thank you so much for what you're doing, not just for the Arab American community, not just for the Palestinian community, but for all Americans. You are helping us assert our democracy again, our democracy that is on life support. I want to focus my remarks on the myth, which is really a propaganda, that you're throwing your vote away by voting against genocide, mainly because you're voting for an underdog. So there's this propaganda, this extortion of your vote, that it would be a waste of your vote to vote against genocide. And I want to speak to that. First of all, genocide is the moral imperative of our time. 200,000 people who have been slaughtered on our phone screens, on our computer screens, 2 million being bombed, denied food, water, shelter, sanitation, medical care, hospitals, schools, universities destroyed, journalists murdered. Over 1,000 children have had leg amputations without anesthesia. That is a symbol of the brutality and the cruelty of this genocide. If you vote for genocide, you are consenting to it and you are enabling it. Don't let them talk you into it. Don't let them talk you out of your humanity. That, above all, is why we must hold our elected officials accountable and vote to end genocide. Otherwise, you are part of that genocide. Voting against genocide is a practical imperative because 500,000 lives are on the line right now, according to the United Nations, from starvation, who may die over the course of the next month. And now there is polio and cholera thrown into the mix. Every vote against genocide is a shot across the bow of the empire, announcing that its days are numbered and that the opposition is getting organized and we will not be stopped. That builds the pressure for a ceasefire right now and a weapons embargo right now and brings the day closer when we will achieve them. So do not think for a minute that your vote against genocide is just a theoretical vote or just a vote which is hypothetical. This vote has power, and it has power right now. As Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. Your vote is that demand. Our vote is our only power in a democracy that is bought and paid for by billionaires. If we do not use that power to vote for what we want, then we are giving up that power. That, again, is why we must vote against genocide. voting for the lesser evil disappears your opposition to genocide. In fact, there is no lesser evil. We have two greater evils, one conducting genocide now, the other saying to finish the job.
That's right. That's right.
There is no lesser evil. We say forget the lesser evil, fight for the greater good,
right.
like our lives depend on it, because our lives do depend on it. What goes down in Gaza goes down for all of us. In Gaza, we are looking at the end of human rights, the end of international law, the normalization of the torture and murder of children on an industrial scale. If you're okay with that, go ahead and vote for it. If you're not okay with it, we can stop it, because the majority of the American people has gone on record over and over again. We oppose this genocide. If democracy prevails, we will stop this genocide in this election, if not before this election. Because simply by building our movements, by running our campaigns, by reaching out to voters, by tabling, by phone banking, by door knocking, by flyering, by showing up. Remember, they want us to think that we are few and far between. We are not. The majority of the American people are struggling. 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Half of Americans are barely managing to pay their rent from month to month. 100 million Americans are locked into medical debt, 44 into student debt. This is who our agenda addresses, because the same forces that are conducting genocide in Gaza are robbing us blind here at home, consuming half of our congressional budget so that we cannot afford the health care, the housing, the education, dealing with the climate crisis, which we have all the resources in the world to deal with if they were not being exhausted by these endless wars and the endless war machine, of which that genocide in Gaza is an expression. So they want us to think that we are small and powerless, that resistance is futile. That is a propaganda campaign, that is a psyop in order to disarm us. We do have majority power. Remember, 1 out of every 3 eligible voters chose not to vote in 2020. 1 out of every 3. And then add to that the numbers who oppose genocide, the numbers who are stuck in student debt. These are the numbers of people to whom our agenda speaks, because those of us who are calling for peace and an end to genocide are also calling for an end to the war on working people here at home. So this is a unifying agenda. This is a mobilizing agenda. This is about us having the courage of our convictions and moving forward. We're in a dark moment right now because the Kool-Aid is running very strong right now for the Harris campaign. This is Obama mania 2.0. Many of us have lived through this before a couple times. It will pass. It will pass. You know, Kamala Harris has not had a single challenging interview yet, nor a press conference. So you can be sure the honeymoon will not last, because the policies are what they are, because this person has a track record that has put Americans into this moment of despair, this moment of struggle, this moment of agony. That agony is in our foreign policy, and that agony is in our domestic policy. That agony is very much a product of the Republican and Democratic parties. Do not think for a moment that the Democratic Party is the answer to fascism. It would be more accurate to say it is the cause of fascism. Why is that? It's because the Democrats have pushed this policy, the so-called neoliberal agenda of privatization, of austerity, of major tax giveaways to the super wealthy, and of endless war. That has led to the disemployment, the loss of about 30 million jobs for working people in this country over the last several decades. That has created an enormous amount of misery. Add to that the Wall Street bailouts and the NAFTA shipping of our jobs overseas. So this is what drives the shift to the right. This is what drives right-wing extremism, when people have incredible economic misery and insecurity inflicted on them. And the answer to that is like what we just saw in France, where the parties of the left basically get together and oppose the right. That right-wing victory was predicted. And the tables were turned because the left got together and made a strong case for actually answering the material needs and the actual misery of working people in France. We can do the same here. The same principles apply. America is the odd man out. Together with Israel, we are driving this genocide, but the rest of the world opposes it. We are no longer the economic power in the world. We are not the dominant power. So we need to start behaving like we are a member of the global community, like we are one of the adults in the room, not simply a rebellious bully in the schoolyard trying to compel foreign policy all over the world. As we back off of this imperial foreign policy, we have the money that we need by cutting our military budget, at least 50 to 75%, and putting those dollars here at home where we need them. This is mainly to give you the courage of our convictions. We have the numbers, we have the agenda, we have the values of the majority of the American people, and we have the solutions, not only to this genocide. Kamala Harris could pick up the phone right now. Joe Biden could pick up the phone right now, and the genocide would be over. But what are they doing? They're watching Israel smash school after school with 2,000-pound bombs. 3 of them dropped on the last school in Gaza City. 3 of these 2,000 bombs killing 100 people or more. They couldn't say exactly because the bodies were not identifiable. And what did the Harris-Biden administration do? They appropriated another $20 billion of weapons, which will continue to flow for the next many years. This is a criminal administration. We need to stand up and oppose them. What goes in Gaza doesn't stay in Gaza. For the sake of Gaza, for the sake of us all, we need to stand up for human rights, international law, humanity, and for our own souls. We need to stand up. That is why we must vote to abandon Biden, abandon Harris, and put real democracy back into the White House, supporting these progressive, people-powered political campaigns that actually are the solution to what we need going forward. I'll leave you with that. Thank you so very much.
Ceasefire now!
Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now!
My name is Hudayfa Ahmed. I am the spokesperson and head of media of Abandoned Biden. We're wrapping it up now. 11 months. We've seen a live stream genocide. 3 specific instances stand out to me. The first is of a mother in Gaza who, according to her, had spent 10 years trying to conceive until she finally had twin boys, and the interviewer asks her, "Where are your boys?" And she says, "Right here," and she holds up the body with 2 headless babies. I have seen an image of a man flattened by a tank. His insides spread out like unpopped water balloons, and according to eyewitnesses, he was alive when that Israeli tank ran over him. I've seen a child walking with a backpack, and he's stopped by a journalist saying, "Where are you going?" He says, "I'm going to the hospital. I'm taking my brother to the hospital." He says, "Where is your brother?" He goes, "Inside my backpack." This has been going on for 11 months. What's happening in Gaza isn't one issue amongst many issues for the 2024 election. It is the issue of the 2024 election. And whether you as an individual or as a politician, the seriousness that you actually give to this issue is what decides your seriousness as an individual or as a politician. It's what decides your electability. And so we're here saying and announcing that we are launching Abandon Harris. And we're very well aware of what this decision entails and what it will take and what will happen if we get our way. And we're saying that we are firm, we are full of conviction, we will be steadfast in this decision, and we will not waver. We did not waver when we were spoken down to and bullied back when Biden was leading the ticket, and we will not waver, and we will not be bullied Now that Harris is leading the ticket,
That's right.
thank you very much. We'll make some time for some questions before we say goodbye to our esteemed guests.
I have a question. Jill Stein with Robust Opposition. I'd like to ask each of the three candidates here a hypothetical question based on Jill's comment about what happened in France. If Abandon Harris decided to have a conference where all three candidates would come and make their case, and the people in the conference and the uncommitted people around the country could vote to choose one person that they thought was the strongest one against Kamala Harris, would each of the three of you be willing to drop out and endorse that person?
That's a tricky question.
And
It's a serious question. But I would say that this is not the space for it right now. And I would apologize for that, but I would say that right now we'd like to focus on the long-term Abandon Harris. And as time goes on, hopefully that question will answer itself.
And a question, since Joe Biden dropped out of the race and Kamala Harris has become the nominee, has there been any attempted outreach or any sort of dialogue with the Harris campaign?
When Abandon Biden launched, we launched giving Joe Biden a 2-week ultimatum. You have until October 31st to call for and enforce a permanent ceasefire. That ultimatum, that deadline was not met. When he stepped down and endorsed Kamala Harris, in our press release we said that we invite Kamala Harris to meet with us. Various reporters and news agencies reached out to the Harris campaign and they said we didn't hear anything back. So we've extended our olive branch. We've said come speak to us, and we were ignored just like we were in the past. And this is a pattern that happens with a Democratic Party. And so we've decided the time for speaking is over. Now is the time to back shop.
As a follow-up to that, have there been any other Democratic leaders, not necessarily at the top of the ticket, but perhaps state legislators or any other elected representatives that have attempted to outreach or had some dialogue there?
The only person I can clearly say has been firm in their stance has been Rashida Tlaib. As she stood there when Netanyahu was giving a speech, and as her fellow members of Congress were cheering and applauding the man who was massacring her people. She's been the only one, as I'm aware, who has had a firm stance on this entire matter and who has been willing to speak in any capacity. Other than that, it's been complete silence. Everyone seems to be towing the party line, and when they say, vote for this candidate and hold them accountable, we're not seeing any accountability right now. Yes?
A lot of people are being told to think that because Harris didn't pick Josh Shapiro, but she picked Tim Walz, that somehow that's an indication that she secretly wants to support the ceasefire movement, but she can't do that right now. But once we elect her, once we all get behind her, something will change once she's elected president. What is the response of Abandon Biden and Abandon Harris to that?
We'd like to remind people that it is Kamala Harris who's leading the ticket, not Tim Walz. And we are faced with rhetoric that says Kamala Harris can't do anything now, she's just the VP. So if she's just the VP, then why does it matter if she picks Walz or Shapiro? It doesn't matter. And if she's a lame duck vice president, she's not going to make a good president. And so we're saying, and we released a press release 9 hours before her Detroit rally, in which she made it clear what her stance is regarding protesters and genocide. We told people, we caution you against falling for meaningless platitudes and empty rhetoric. Do not fall for meaningless symbols. And we were vindicated 9 hours later. I was even surprised by how fast it happened. And so that's our message. Do not allow yourself to be placated by meaningless platitudes and empty rhetoric. Yes.
Secretary of State Blinken just said that Israel has agreed to accept the U.S. proposal for a ceasefire if it goes into place between now and November 5th. What is the strategy?
We would look into the details of that, but based on the track record of every single time this announcement has come, there's always been something that's never been reported. There's always been something that's never been reported, and to have the Israeli Minister of Defense come out and say the main blocker of a ceasefire is Netanyahu speaks volumes. The entire time we've been told that it's been the other side that's been blocking ceasefires, and within that Israeli cabinet, we have the Minister of Defense saying Netanyahu is the main obstacle to a ceasefire. So we're not going to comment on that right now, but we will say we're going to judge it based on its track record. We're not going to believe things at face value. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you to our guests. Thank you to everyone who flew up from various swing states. We appreciate you, and let's see this thing through. Thank you.
Folks, if you could be sure to take signs, and we should head to the protest. It never ends, folks.